So I want to welcome everybody tonight to tonight's SALT Talks. My name is Patty Schramm, Parent Resource Trainer Coordinator for the SALT Talks. And we're here tonight to talk about alternatives to guardianship. Now, this whole month, we are looking at how do I prepare for when I'm gone? You know, what happens? You know, how do we prepare now for when we're not here for our children? What do we need to look at and things like that? So we're going to be hitting guardianship a lot through this month, but I thought it would be a good idea to start out with the alternatives to guardianship so you knew what else was out there. So tonight we have two speakers, Josh Young and Courtney Hineman. I'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves as we turn it over. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box. I believe Josh said he'll give you instruction too when he wants some feedback during the presentation as well. But we'll monitor the chat box if something comes up or if you think about something, and we'll have time at the end for some open discussion as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh and Courtney and let you guys get started.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I'm not much for formal introductions, but I'm the Director of Operations for the Ohio Network for Innovation, or ONI for short. Courtney, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Courtney Hineman. I'm the Community Outreach Advocate for the Butler County Board of DD.
Great. All right. So somebody, maybe Patty, can you tell me that you can see the screen that says Another Way?
Yes, that's the one I'm looking at.
Great. And you can't see my notes, correct?
Correct.
Good, thank you. All right, well, first, we always thank everybody for sharing some of your time and your attention. We tend to just kind of jump right in because we know that our time is limited. And this is a really, really important topic and pretty far reaching. So we're going to give you an abbreviated version because there's a lot that we could talk about, but we're going to sort of distill it down to its basic concepts. Might go quickly, but our hope is that we'll at the very least pique your interest so that when you leave, when this presentation is over, you'll think, maybe we should learn more about that. And then if you do want to learn more, we are certainly available to help give you some additional information. So just know that's available. And then finally, before we get started, this is really a great opportunity to kind of get ahead of the curve. So sometimes we find ourselves, in life or in especially the DD system, just kind of reacting to things, right? But what we're going to talk about today is a great way to think about planning. So the movement, the supported decision-making movement that you'll hear more about, it's been going on for a while and it is not going anywhere. I've done several presentations over the past year, including to all of the US, and this conversation just keeps gaining momentum. So take what you can from this, realize it's a good opportunity to get ahead of the curve. All right, Courtney, you're up.
Okay, so let's start with the life trajectory. It's basically a tool that helps us plan backwards. Talks about what we want to happen in our lives or in the life of someone we care about, and then figure out how to get there and what steps we need to take. So I wanted to ask all of you if you can either unmute yourself or type in the chat. What are some of your goals for your son's or daughter's life, and what kind of lives do you want to help them have ultimately?
So Patty, you just read whatever we hear and we'll go from there. Okay.
I know for me, it's just like to be, for them to be independent and be able to live comfortably independently. It looks like we have working in the community just popped up.
Mm-hmm.
Have proper care. Let's see, to live independently, living safe and working in the community. Anybody else have anything they want to add? Live independent and work, yeah. Being happy.
Yeah, good themes there. All right.
So a lot of you have brought up independence and being happy and being healthy. And another thing would be to have friends or be important to other people. So these are all pretty common, and these are all things that we want for the people we care about or want to help.
So the other way that we use this tool is to help people identify the things that we don't want to have happen in their life, the things that we want to avoid. So same thing, what kinds of things come to mind for you when you think about your son, your daughter, your loved one, the things that might make you cringe or just sad if their life was like that later on?
To be taken advantage of. I was just thinking about that one too.
Yep, exactly. What else?
We want them to be comfortable and not be struggling.
Mhm.
I think some are agreeing with some of the being taken advantage of.
Yep.
Anybody else? Not having the level of care he requires, he will never be independent. Yep, that is a big concern.
Yeah, yeah. So we hear a lot of this when we ask. We hear this and we hear, we don't want them to be unhappy. The taking advantage of thing comes up all the time. We don't want to be lonely. We don't want them to not reach their potential. And of course, there's a whole lot more that we could talk about, right? And sometimes it's easier to talk about what we're afraid of. But I think these kind of resonate with you guys. So now we've got a picture between what Courtney talked about and what I talked about of the things we want for the future and the things that we don't want. So how do we get to the things we want and avoid the things that we don't want? So we were going to watch a video. Courtney, I don't think it's embedded in here. So we're just going to talk about it. So guardianship is often what people hear about as a way to plan for the future and protect their loved ones, right? But guardianship is really meant to be the last resort after other less restrictive options have been tried, because guardianship is actually the legal removal of a person's right to make decisions for themselves. And what's more, there's some studies about people who have more self-determination, more control over their lives. And we're going to talk about that in a slide or two here. But there are many other things that we can try aside from guardianship, which you'll hear about. It's just that most people don't know about these things. So part of what Courtney and I do is we just try to educate people so that they can make an informed choice. Because the truth is that if you think that guardianship is the only option, you're not making an informed choice. We're not trying to steer people one way or the other, just make sure they have all the information. All right, so what should we remember as we move forward? The guardianship is the legal removal of a person's rights to make decisions. And because of the very serious nature of this, it's intended to be the last resort after we try other less restrictive options. You should also know that once guardianship is established, it can be really difficult to reverse or get rid of. It's not impossible, but it doesn't happen very often. In fact, most of the time, guardianship ends when the person under guardianship, so in this case, your loved one, dies. So if we think about that for a minute, we make a judgment about a person, often when they're very young, and it literally sticks with them for the rest of their life. Some other important things we know, and a lot of this comes from the National Court Indicators. It's a national survey that's conducted with people who receive services in this field. Courtney's going to tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, and we know that a lot of the people with more self-determination have more control over their lives and have a better life outcome. They live more independently, have more financial independence, and have jobs that pay more. And all of that sounds good, but there's more. People with more self-determination are more likely to be included in their communities, spend time with friends, go on dates, have more privacy, and be able to practice their religion. And they're more likely just to have their rights respected. And then the most surprising one, people with more self-determination are better able to identify and resist abuse and exploitation. So that's pretty big.
Yeah, so a lot of things Courtney just went over are some of the things that you guys identified wanting for your loved ones, right? But we also know some things about people who don't get to make their own decisions or who have less self-determination, like they might not develop decision-making skills at all. They also might not be included in decisions that affect them as they get older. So medical decisions, living arrangements, sometimes even things as basic as food and clothing. And over time, people who don't get to make their own decisions, or at least some of them, can become passive and develop low self-esteem, which can affect their physical and mental well-being. So another opportunity to hear from you. Why do you think we do go to guardianship so often? Because it's actually increasing across the country, but why do we think that it's the answer? What have you heard, or what do you think?
There's one comment out there: not having the level of care he requires, he will never be independent. They said he does not. How does a person who lacks capacity with no guardian have a better life outcome?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're going to try to help address that as well. What else? Why else do you think you go to guardianship? Why do you feel drawn to guardianship?
People think it's best for the individual.
Yep.
And I think we've been hearing, there's been a lot of talk over the years. Of course, it's been, that you need guardianship to make decisions.
Yep, exactly.
Let's see, some think it's protection. And what is the alternatives to guardianship if the person lacks capacity?
These are all great points. So Courtney's going to tell us a little bit about what we've seen and why people are drawn to guardianship, and then we'll talk about some of the other alternatives.
Yeah.
There was one other one. Doctors advise. Sorry.
Ooh, yep. All right, Courtney, go ahead.
Right. We actually have some misconceptions that lead us to guardianship. And one of them was actually addressed in the chat, which was that parents have to get guardianship for their son or daughter when they turn 18. And this is not true. There are many other things we should be trying before guardianship, even at age 18. And this one's big because a recent study revealed that there's this pipeline between the schools and guardianship. Parents are told or encouraged to get guardianship, but are rarely, if ever, given information about the less restrictive options or about the real limitations of guardianship. So part of our project is trying to get this information to schools and parents so you know about this stuff. And another misconception would be that if I don't have guardianship, I won't be involved or know what's going on. Also not true, and this one's easy. All kinds of releases of information can be used to grant access to important information from schools, medical providers, banks, you name it. But let's look at the biggest misconception people have about guardianship.
So that's that guardianship is going to protect the person from harm, from getting arrested, from abuse, neglect, exploitation, all of those things, right? And they're valid concerns. It's just that there's actually no proof that people under guardianship are safer than those who are not under guardianship. And they've done the studies to try to find that proof, and it just isn't there. So we don't have time to get into all the statistics now, but we're going to talk more about that. There are actually some really significant limitations on guardianship that many people don't know about when they pursue it. So guardianship does not allow you to force someone to take their medication or to attend their medical appointments, or in reality, to keep someone from going somewhere or doing something that they really want to do. It does allow you to take some legal action on their behalf after those things happen, but that's kind of the extent of it. And you don't necessarily need guardianship to be able to do those things. So here's just a quick story about a limitation of guardianship. I was working with someone who had a guardian. We had a team meeting. It was me, his provider of services, him, and his guardian. And the first thing that this guy says is that he wants to donate his plasma. Well, he wanted to earn money. The guardian kind of rolled her eyes and said, "You're not going to donate your plasma. That's silly. Come on, we're not even here to talk about that. Stay focused." Well, he kept bringing it up during the meeting. "I want to donate my plasma." And she kept dismissing it and telling him no. The meeting ended, and she got in her car, the guardian, and drove away. And I went back to my office. And then this guy left his apartment and he walked down the street and he donated his plasma. The guardian hadn't given consent for it, but there was also nothing she could do to stop it from happening. Now, should the place that he went have asked if he had a guardian first? I mean, I guess they don't ask me if I have a guardian, right? And there's not necessarily anything about this particular person that would lead you to believe he needed one until you talk to him at length. So really important to know about some of the limitations, but what else should we know? Well, if you remember that Courtney told you that people with more self-determination are actually better at resisting abuse and exploitation, maybe that's because they have more practice making their own decisions, drawing their own boundaries, and standing up for themselves. So guardianship doesn't actually do what we think it does most of the time. It isn't even intended to. It has a very specific purpose. But if it's the only option we know about, then of course it's the only option that we're going to promote or pursue. Now, sometimes guardianship is the right thing to do. So some people, even with support, are unable to understand information and make decisions. Or there's an immediate and short-term health or safety risk that calls for someone to step in. And of course, we want someone to have help in those situations. That doesn't mean that they're incapable of making any decisions. One of the most impactful quotes I ever heard from someone was from an attorney talking about guardianship. And she said, anyone who can express their desires or their wishes, no matter what that looks like, whether that's using words, blinking, making gestures, pointing at pictures, whatever it is, if they can express they want or don't want, like or don't want something, then they have some capacity to make some decisions in their life. It's then our responsibility to make sure that we're presenting choices and options to them in a way that they can understand and respond to. So we have just used guardianship in a pretty heavy-handed way historically. We apply it to all kinds of situations, and it's just often not the right tool for the situation at hand. It can be like using a sledgehammer when what you're really trying to do is hang a picture on the wall. You're going to end up doing a whole lot more damage than good.
Here's another analogy that might help, or that you might find helpful in talking to others about guardianship. Anyone knows someone who thinks duct tape can fix everything, no matter what the issue? Get the duct tape. Chair leg is wobbly, needs a little support, duct tape. Leaky pipe, duct tape. Cut your finger with a knife, duct tape. Yeah, listen, it's convenient, I get it. It might even seem like it's working at first, but it's not the right tool for the job. And it's also not a very good long-term solution, responding the same way all the time without considering what the person actually wants or needs. This doesn't mean that duct tape, or in this case, guardianship, isn't good for anything. It only means that it has a pretty specific purpose. When we try to use it outside of its intended purpose, it doesn't hold up so well. So when it comes to guardianship, ask yourself, are we giving this the duct tape treatment when there are actually better tools available? Are we using the right tool for the right job? Because there's really a versatile set of tools out there, and the more tools you have access to and knowledge of, the better you're going to be able to help people. Because what works for one person or situation isn't necessarily going to work for another. So know how to use the tools, build on your skill set, practice.
All right, so here we are. Great. Guardianship should be a last resort, and we should explore less restrictive options, the other tools that are out there. Got it. But what are those less restrictive options, those other tools? How else can we help people learn and practice decision-making skills, if not guardianship? Now, you may have seen or heard of some of this stuff before. We're not going to do a deep dive on all of this just for the sake of time, but these are just some of the alternatives. This is by no means an exhaustive list. So let's say that somebody needs a little bit of help to manage their money, especially their benefit money, their Social Security, SSI money. Well, a payee is a person or an organization that's assigned to manage a person's benefit money. They make sure that the important bills and the expenses get paid, and that a person has access to the money that's left over for things that they want or need in their life. And a good payee can also help a person understand their budget and involve them in the decision-making so they can learn that skill.
A trust fund is a way to keep larger amounts of money without it affecting a person's eligibility for other benefits like Medicaid or waiver. They can be set up in different ways, and money can be saved and then distributed for certain things, ensuring that a person has access to what they need without having to take full responsibility for managing all that money.
All right, and then there's a power of attorney. So this is an arrangement where someone, let's say me, I give decision-making authority for certain things to someone else who I trust. I'll use Patty as an example. I might decide that I want Patty to make certain medical decisions for me. And maybe that's surgeries, right? I get confused and I really trust Patty to make the right decision for me. So I ask Patty, will you agree to step in and make medical decisions that involve surgery for me? And if she agrees, then we can sign a power of attorney form for healthcare. And then she has the authority to make those decisions for me. I'm not giving up my legal right to make the decisions. I'm just asking for help and appointing someone I trust to go ahead and make those decisions for me. And I can use it in at least two different ways. I can say, Patty, I'd like you to start making those decisions for me right now. Or, Patty, I'm good right now, but at some point in the future, if or when I'm unable to make those kinds of decisions for myself, you're the person I want to step in and make those for me. So that's an example of using a power of attorney for healthcare, but you can also use a power of attorney for financial matters as well. Now, the nice thing about a power of attorney is that I retain my rights and I can change it or modify it as I go. So if I decide that I want more or less help to make decisions, I can simply change the power of attorney. Maybe now I want help to make decisions about my medications as well. Well, the new power of attorney form will indicate that. And then Patty, if I still choose her to be my power of attorney, now has the authority to make those decisions for me.
Supported decision-making is a worldwide movement that has gained a lot of momentum lately. The whole idea is that we all need some help to make some decisions sometimes. You and I might ask friends, family, or experts for help to make certain decisions, to understand information better before we decide. So this is all about doing the exact same thing for people who happen to have disabilities. We're helping them understand information so they can make and learn from their own decisions instead of just taking that right away. In Ohio, a person can designate a chosen representative to make decisions about DD services for them. Again, this is voluntary. Both parties have to agree. When there is an acknowledgement form they sign, again, this would only be for the services a person receives in the DD system, not for other kinds of decisions.
All right, a conservator, and I try to be careful when I talk about this because it's kind of nuanced and it might be changing, but the more I've learned about conservatorship, the more it seems like something that we should really do more often. So conservatorship is like voluntary guardianship. I can approach the court and say, you know, I do want someone else to make certain decisions for me. And here is someone I trust to do that. Again, maybe Patty. Probate court, can you approve and oversee that arrangement? And then the rules of guardianship can apply to that relationship. But the person, me, retains their right to modify it, to change the person who makes the decisions, to change the kinds of decisions that the person makes, or to end it at a later date. So it's me, it's the person who wants help to make decisions, initiating it. It's not an outside party forcing a judgment on them. So it's kind of like a power of attorney, except it can apply to all kinds of situations, not just healthcare and money. And you are asking the court to be involved. Now, one other quick note, if you followed any of the Britney Spears stuff when it was happening, you may have heard that her dad and some others were her conservators. Well, in California, that means something totally different. Different states use different terms for things. So in California, a conservator is basically a legal guardian. Her rights were removed. In Ohio, conservatorship is voluntary. Guardianship is the legal removal of a person's rights. And the only other thing I add when I talk about conservatorship is this other option for limited guardianship, because maybe this person does need someone else to make certain decisions for them. Well, you can ask the judge to appoint you as the limited guardian with limited authority. I may need somebody else to make my medical decisions for me. Fair enough. That doesn't mean that all of my other rights to make decisions should be taken away. You could be appointed guardian for medical decisions only, or whatever kind of help I need.
Technology options are so vast nowadays, from in-home assistants like Alexa to various apps that help us get around, or video chat and check in from our home, or devices that remind us to take our medication. I was in a webinar a while ago about alternative and augmentative communication, and we talked about so many different things that to help a person communicate. And in some cases, without these things, we might think the person doesn't understand what's being talked about or doesn't have anything to say about it. But with it, they're able to express themselves and have more control over their lives. It was a really amazing presentation led by two young guys with autism. So really selling people short when we don't think about how technology might help them. Real quickly, I just wanted to add my own personal example. In my apartment, I have remote supports. So I have an iPad in my room and my living room, and I also have a motion sensor above my bedroom door. And so if I get up at night to go to the bathroom and I'm not back within like 15 minutes or something like that, they'll call me to make sure I'm okay. And also I have sensors in my apartment that can detect whether or not I've fallen. And so that also is another thing that can help me at night with, being safe at night. Even though there's no physical staff here, I can have the remote support here.
And that's a really great example of being able to provide for someone's health and safety without necessarily having to be the guardian to do that, right? I have one other example I'll share as well before we get to the last point here. So I am someone who often forgets what's going on if it's not right in front of me. So when I'm cooking, if I walk out of the kitchen, I immediately forget that there's anything on the stove, and it happens all the time. Now, if you didn't know me any better, you might say, I don't know if you should be living alone or cooking by yourself if you leave stuff on the stove all the time, right? And that may be a fair point. I use an Alexa. So it's that sort of in-home assistant, and I can ask it to remind me of things. So when I walk out of the kitchen, I say, Alexa, set a timer for 8 minutes. I inevitably forget that I'm cooking something. I get involved in something else, but then Alexa goes off and tells me that timer's up, you got to get back to the kitchen. It also reminds me about taking out the trash, the recyclables, important appointments. So again, these are all ways to help somebody have more control of their life, make more of their own decisions without removing their legal rights. And then something as simple as a release of information. This allows important information to be shared with others so that they can stay informed and help a person understand their options and make decisions if necessary. So that misconception that we mentioned earlier about parents not being able to get important information about their loved ones once they are adults, well, a release of information can be signed so that doctors can share diagnoses and treatments, medical summaries, etc. with you. And like Courtney said earlier, you can create a release of information for many different situations, school, work, banking. So there are definitely more options in all of these that we just talked about, but you can see that before we start talking about something like guardianship, we've got some exploring to do. Now, the nice thing about all of these options is that they can generally be used together. So let's say that I do need help managing some money. I don't necessarily need a guardian. Let's start with a payee and see if that is the right tool for the job. Okay, but I may not know how to make a decision by myself about where to live. Okay, maybe I use supported decision-making. I reach out to some people around me who I trust, and they can help me get the information I need, present my choices to me so that I can make a better decision. All right, but I do, and this is real, forget to take my medication sometimes, right? Okay, well, did we try a simple reminder on my cell phone or Alexa or a pill minder or an electronic device that prepares them and an alarm goes off to tell me it's time to take them? If we haven't tried those things first, all of these things that we're talking about, then it's really not time to go to guardianship yet. But a lot of this has to do with the idea that people with disabilities, all people with disabilities, have the right to make their own decisions instead of having someone else make them on their behalf, even if it means they need help to do that. So here's one other way to think about it. It's really part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Imagine that you are out in public and with someone who happens to use a wheelchair, and you come up to a store that they would really like to go into, but that store doesn't have a ramp. Do we then turn to that person who's using the wheelchair and say, I'm sorry, you don't have the right to go into that store. Of course we don't. What we say is that they need support, they need accommodations, they need help to get into that store. So supported decision-making is about doing the exact same thing for people, just in terms of making decisions. People may need help to make decisions, and that help may look different for everyone, but that doesn't mean they don't have the right or that they're not capable. We may just have to be creative about how we help them.
Okay, so what is it? What is supported decision making and how do we explain it?
So here's a pretty common explanation of it. First of all, it is not one size fits all. So it can look different for everyone. It can look different for the same person in a different situation. But this is basically people asking for help from others they trust. So yeah, friends and family members, maybe even neighbors, members of their team, their support team, professionals like doctors or other experts, just to help them understand the choices so they can make their own decisions. That's all it is. We all do it. And it may seem really simple, but because of the way that the system has treated people with disabilities for decades, this is still kind of a radical idea. Because when you ask for help to make decisions like buying a new car, changing jobs, medical stuff, relationship stuff even, well, you're often seen as wise or mature or responsible. When someone with a disability needs help to make decisions, that's often seen as a vulnerability, something that we need to protect them from. But just because somebody needs help to make some decisions, and remember, we all do sometimes, doesn't mean that their right to make those or other decisions should just automatically be taken away. So supported decision-making is about respecting a person's right to make as many decisions for themselves as they can, and in supporting them to do so in creative ways, in person-centered ways, in whatever way they need.
One of the other analogies we found to be pretty helpful is the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The basic premise was that the contestant was asked a series of questions which got harder as they went on, kind of like life. But what could they do if they weren't sure what to do? If they didn't know the answer? They had lifelines they could use. They could call someone they trusted and ask for help, or they could ask the audience, or they could get help to narrow down their options so that they were only choosing between two of them. Well, that's really what supported decision-making is, helping people identify and use their lifelines, helping them learn who, when, and how to ask for help when they need it. Those lifelines are important and we all have them. But again, this all starts with the idea that people have the right to make their own decisions about their lives, and that with some help, people can learn decision-making skills. So we really have to buy into that first.
All right, so this is just a simple visual to help us understand what supported decision-making looks like. So in the center is that decision maker. Again, can be of varying abilities, but that person who's asking for help from their supporters, those are the ones who surround them, is the person who ultimately makes the decision. So those supporters, they can help in a variety of ways. Role-playing, making pros and cons lists, doing research together, explaining things in a way that makes sense to the person, or any other way that's helpful to them. What the supporters do not do is make the final decision, because that right remains with that decision maker. They can even create a supported decision-making agreement, which you'll see later on. It's just a form that identifies the people that they want them, or they want to help them with certain decisions, those lifelines that Courtney was talking about. So we have samples and examples of those. They're not necessary. You don't have to use them to use supported decision-making, but they're often helpful for teams. And here's the other thing. We did talk a little bit about guardianship, right? Supported decision-making can also be used with guardianship. They're not mutually exclusive. Just because someone has a guardian doesn't mean that they can't still make some of their own choices. In fact, our organization does provide some guardianship services to people. And the first thing that I try to do is help the person understand the situation and see what they would do, what decision they want to make. And I don't always have to agree with that, right? Because part of life is taking some risks and trying new things, right? In fact, there's a risk of not trying new things. If you read some of the studies out there, the risk of isolation is just as dangerous as things like obesity and smoking on a person's health. So we can use supported decision-making to help people have a little bit more control of their life, even if we are guardian. It's just about involving them as much as we can.
I have used supported decision-making in my own life. I just never knew what it was called. I just knew that there were some things sometimes I have a hard time understanding, or that I need to talk out with someone in order to make my decisions. For example, when I go to doctors, my staff will go with me. I normally write down questions I have. It will explain what has been going on, but my staff will tell the doctor any information I might be missing or might not know. They will also ask questions I didn't even think about asking. My staff will also take notes. That way, if the doctor is explaining things quickly, I can explain it to you more slowly so I can understand better. Another person that helps me a lot with decision making is my stepmom. And she's helped me with the relationships, and she's helped me if I want her advice, I want to say to a friend. For example, I had someone approach me that I knew their mom through Best Buddies, and their mom approached me and said, I think you and my daughter would be good roommates together. And but after talking about it with my stepmom, I realized that I didn't really know her very well. And so I kind of practiced with my stepmom that situation. We kind of role played together about what I would say. That way, when I talked to her, I'd be able to say what I wanted to say, and you know, word in a way where it didn't hurt her feelings. And my dad helps me by he makes an Excel spreadsheet for my budget. And if I go over, it will go red. And if I notice in the sheet that I'm going over a category, like for example, if I keep spending over my money in groceries, I will email my dad and we will adjust my budget. My coworker Connie has helped me with both work and personal situations. She has helped me figure out my hours for work. I'm autistic and I need routine, but I also have trouble seeing the big picture and planning for changes in routine. So Connie and I will go over my Outlook calendar so I know when to start preparing for committees. She's also helped me by encouraging me to speak up for myself and to tell my providers what I need help with. In the past, I had asked for help with cleaning from providers, but I wasn't getting it. I mentioned it to Connie and she encouraged me to reach out to my support coordinator. And we had a meeting with my stepmom and my provider at the time, and we made a cleaning list together so we knew what my responsibilities were and what my provider's responsibilities were.
All right, so there are a lot of things that we can look at to sort of help us practice this. And there is a site called imdetermined.org, which is fantastic. It's got a ton of resources on there for both parents and educators and for young adults or students. So this is one of the examples of something that they have. This is a self-determination checklist. So as someone's going through school, but this can also be used in adulthood, it's going to ask questions to kind of help us be accountable, right? And some of those questions might be that I have others in my life who help me to accomplish goals. I ask for help when I need it, or I know what I need, what I like, and what I enjoy doing. And remember, people can express these in lots of different ways, but if we're asking ourselves these questions, then we're probably not going to panic as much when we get to 18, because hopefully we've developed some of those skills already. Point is, if we're having these conversations about self-determination with students at a younger age, like how much better prepared will they be to advocate, to take control of and responsibility for their lives, and to reach their goals as they become adults?
But how do we know when someone is able to make their own decisions, where they need support, or where they might need someone else to decide for them? Tools like this can help. This is often called the stoplight tool, but it's broken down into different life categories: daily life, employment, healthy living, and spiritual safety and security, that kind of thing. And then it asks the person if they can make their decision without support, if they want or need some support to make their decision, or if they need someone else to decide for them. So when you've completed this tool, you can go back and start talking about what support to make decisions needs to look like in each area of life.
And really quickly, one of the best experiences that I've had with families when talking to them about support decision making is going through this tool together, because the family member, or perhaps even a service coordinator or the provider, they can answer these questions for themselves about the person, right? And we get to see varying answers where maybe someone thinks, oh no, they need support with that. But a provider, for example, says, actually, they don't. They've done pretty well with it, right? So this can be used in a lot of different ways.
Or we might look into other resources that are out there. A person can create a supported decision-making agreement. It's basically a document that identifies who the person wants to help them make decisions and which decisions they want help with. There are lifelines from that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire analogy. We don't have to use an agreement in order to use supported decision-making, but in some cases, the person or the team feels better about the arrangement if it's documented, or they plan to present it to medical professionals or something, and they want something with an official appearance. Here's what one might look like. So this picture here is just the first page. It just says, I want help to make decisions, but I'm not giving up my right to make them. And then page 2, this is where we identify the people we want to help us and how to get a hold of them when we need support. And then this is a page 3, and it talks about that we can decide what kind of support the person gives and what decisions they help us with. And we can decide, we might ask one person for help with medical decisions and a different person for help with work-related decisions. And then page 4, this is where everyone signs it to make it official.
All right. So I know we've given a lot of information. We typically like to kind of round things up with this. So Courtney, you want to introduce it?
Yeah, so safety is one of those important words or issues. It's important to be safe, but it's also important to be happy. But sometimes we prioritize being safe above everything else. This tool, the Happy Safe Grid, is a great way to explore all of the options and balance being happy with being safe. Let us tell you about Evan, and then you can help us figure out what Evan's options are for being safe, but also being happy.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen again, but this time we're going to bring up a whiteboard so we can do this together. So as I'm doing that and preparing that, I'll tell you a little bit about Evan so that you all can jump in and be part of his support team and help him make this important decision. So what should you know about Evan? Well, Evan is a young guy and he's really, really ambitious. He likes to try new things. He wants to be involved in new things. He likes excitement in his life. When Evan goes out in public, he just flashes his smile and people just gravitate towards him, and he loves it. He loves to have people around him. That's the kind of life that he wants, right? The other thing that you should know about Evan is that he does use a wheelchair. He has a very rare disorder, and this disorder causes him to try and hurt himself, even when he doesn't want to. So safety is a real issue for Evan, right? So he chooses to have wrist and ankle restraints. And this helps him stay safe, keep from, for example, gouging at his face, his eyes, his mouth, hitting himself, right? But he also may try to hurt people that he cares about and that he likes. Well, the restraints help with that as well. So during a certain meeting, Evan told his team, and his dad, his guardian, was there, that he wanted to go skydiving. So his dad, understandably, said, no way, you are not going skydiving. Nice try, right? But Evan was pretty persistent about this. So we ended up using something like this happy safe grid to figure out what the best decision would be. So this is kind of how that works. You draw it just like this. Label it happy, safe, unhappy, unsafe. And then we are going to explore all of the options. So this is where we want to hear from you in the chat for sure. Instead of Evan going skydiving, jumping out of a plane, what are some other things that Evan could do? What are some of his other options that we could explore? What do you think? Put them in the chat and then we'll show you how to use this chart. So not jumping out of a plane, but why don't you try this?
First one, helicopter ride.
Helicopter. All right, let's start with that one. Helicopter ride. So when you use this, you plot every idea. You don't dismiss anyone's idea here. So everybody feels heard. But then you plot it this way. How happy or unhappy would the person be if they got to do this? And how safe or unsafe would the person be if they did this? So because we're using the chat, I'll go ahead and kind of help you rate these things based on what I know about Evan. So a helicopter ride. What's Evan going to like about this? Well, he's up in the air flying. That's kind of what he wanted out of his experience skydiving, right? So he's probably going to be pretty happy, but he's not going to get to jump, which is what he really wants. So kind of in the middle. But how safe or unsafe is a helicopter ride for him? Well, we could probably agree that it's at least safer than jumping out of a plane, right? Here's the other thing that you should probably know about Evan. When he gets excited about anything or even angry, mad, frustrated with something, he is more likely to hurt himself, right? So let's put him right around here because going up in a helicopter might be really, really exciting for him. He might have trouble managing those emotions. So it's not going to be completely safe. In fact, nothing in life is completely safe, right? So let's chart the helicopter right about here with happy and safe. All right, what is the next suggestion?
Let's see, I have a hot air balloon and go to iFly.
All right, let's do hot air balloon, then we'll go to iFly. So hot air balloon, similar to helicopter, right? He's going to be up in the air, right? A little less room probably in a hot air balloon for the wheelchair. I don't know. I've not ever been in a hot air balloon, but similar happiness. And how safe do we think the hot air balloon is? The importance here for us tonight is not that we get this exactly right. It's just to show you how to use the tool. So I may be off, or you may disagree with where I plot these things. Just remember, this is just how you use the tool. So let's say that a hot air balloon is maybe a little less safe than a helicopter for Evan. He'd be about the same happiness, but a little less safe. All right, does everyone know what iFly is? iFly, unless I'm mistaken, is like an indoor skydiving experience. So it's like a wind tunnel that goes up and down and you can kind of float in it. So how happy would Evan be if he got to do that? Well, he's having the experience of skydiving, but he's not jumping out of a plane. So he's not going to be way up here, right? But he's going to be pretty happy. How safe is he going to be with iFly? If you don't know much about it, there are lots of ways that you can do iFly, and some of those involve having people help you as you float up and down. So let's put him right around here, pretty safe and happier than a helicopter and a hot air balloon. All right, what's another suggestion?
There's one that wrote a passenger in a four-wheeler.
All right, four-wheeler. Okay, remember, we're going to plot all of these things. So four-wheeler, how happy is he going to be? Well, remember, he wants to jump out of a plane. And I know you guys don't know Evan. I do. Evan has actually ridden on the back of a race car before. So if we suggest to him that he should ride a four-wheeler, he's going to be like, I've already done that. I want to jump out of a plane. So he's probably going to be a little bit unhappy about that one. How safe is it? Well, we could probably debate this with everybody about how safe it is for Evan, right? Some of us might put it over here. Some of us might put it over here. I would say just for the sake of this tool, let's go ahead and put it right around here for now. All right, another suggestion?
Trip on a plane.
All right, so basically a plane ride, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, plane ride. He gets to go up in it. just like the helicopter. So probably a little happier, but he does not get to jump out of it. All right, but how safe is that? Similar to a helicopter, right? But he's probably going to be a little less happy because he'd be more happy to do iFly. Let's put it right around here. All right, a couple more suggestions. What do we got?
Is there any more in the chat? I was going to say a simulator of some sort.
Yeah, no, let's look at that. A simulator. So I'll tell you that Evan's going to say, what the heck are you talking about? Right? Because he wants the real thing. So he's going to be unhappy about that. But how safe is a simulator going to be for him? Probably pretty safe, right? Probably maybe the safest option we have on here, a simulator. So unhappy, but pretty safe. Let's go ahead and plot Dad's suggestion. Don't do it, right? So where's that fall? Well, we can probably guess Evan's not going to be very happy about that, right? But how safe would he be? So initially when we have these conversations, we hear a lot of, oh, he's going to be really safe. But remember, Evan, when he gets really frustrated or upset, is more likely to hurt himself. So how do we all feel if we're told repeatedly that we can't do something that we want to do, that we're not allowed to do it? Well, we probably experience some frustration. So Evan's going to be pretty upset about this. So what initially sounds like it's going to be safe for him, even if he's unhappy, is actually unhappy and unsafe for him. So when you use this tool, it gives you a visual of all of the options that you can decide from, and everybody gets to feel heard and weigh in on each of these options. So I'll tell you how this story kind of concludes while I'm bringing up the last couple of slides of the PowerPoint. So Evan got to go indoor skydiving. So I had moved on to a different position, but his service coordinator contacted me a year later and said, he's going to Chicago to do the iFly thing. And I was ecstatic for him, right? So what happened is we were in a meeting once, and this had been about 3 years later. And Evan said, I want to go skydiving. He then had to use a bathroom. And his staff took him to use a bathroom. And his dad, after 3 years of talking about this, looked at me and said, I think I finally get it. Because it was him and his wife, Evan's mom, we ride motorcycles. And if someone told us that we couldn't ride motorcycles anymore because it was unsafe, we would laugh at them and we would get on our bikes and we would ride away. And I think my son wants a similar experience, just being able to have that sense of freedom, that experience in life. So when Evan went skydiving, we got video of him, the indoor skydiving. He had the biggest smile on his face, but guess who else had the biggest smile on their face? Dad did. And part of that was because we took this process seriously of helping him make those decisions. All right, so ultimately, we want people to know about their options. People with disabilities, parents, educators, service providers, county boards, so many more. But this means that we have to start changing the conversation. And there are at least two ways to do this. So like Courtney said earlier, when the issue of guardianship comes up, just make sure you're asking, what are we actually trying to accomplish with guardianship? Because by asking that question, you can find the right approach. And you might find often that guardianship isn't going to do that, or that there are less restrictive alternatives that will. Another way we can change the conversation is by promoting self-determination, or people just having more control over their lives, their decisions, for everyone, but especially among younger people. So help them learn and practice decision-making, help them build confidence in their abilities, encourage people to have real life experiences, and support them as they learn from them. And remember, the more self-determination a person has, the better life outcomes they have. So doing these things really does lead to better lives for people, and we know it. Introducing these questions and these perspectives can get people thinking differently. It's kind of like that Maya Angelou quote, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. So now we know a little more, hopefully a little better, and it does open up a lot of positive and even exciting possibilities to explore.
So that's it, a lot of information. But we want to emphasize again how much we appreciate your time and attention on this. Your disposition about this issue can really impact its success which is ultimately about helping people live better lives. What we typically like to do is give you all some time to digest this, and then you're welcome to reach out to us after that for any reason. If you want to talk through a situation, if you want to learn more about the tools that are available, or if you'd like us to help you explore less restrictive options. And then once you've got some practice using supported decision making, share your real life stories like mine, because ultimately that's what really helps us get traction and gain momentum. Don't hesitate to reach out or ask for help when you need it. To consider us your lifelines on this topic. We're more than happy to help. With that, are there any questions, comments, or even concerns?
If there's any questions, you can put it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand if you would like. Can you put the link, or even Josh, I don't know if you want to go to the website of I'm Determined, where to find, just kind of like show the website, or you can just put it there. And I think we put an iDetermined.org in the chat box.
Yep. I'll bring it up and I'll show you a little bit about it real quick.
Okay, great. Because
it is a great site, and Courtney and I refer to it a lot. So let's do this and this. All right, so this is I'm Determined. You can see there's a section for youth, for educators, and for families. There are resources. There are plenty of videos too that help you learn how to use these tools. Let me go to this one. So I'm just going to search for goals. You're going to see videos from people. Student involvement in the IEP. So this is basically helping you figure out how to involve your loved one in the IEP process. Because in that IEP process, or as an adult in ISP process, that's decisions are being made in those meetings, right? And there's a difference between being there and actually contributing to the meeting. So that person should really be there. Let's see what else we have.
Hey, Josh.
Yes.
Josh, would you go to the families piece there?
Yep.
And then scroll down.
Mm-hmm.
And then show parent path to success. Click that, the path to success.
Yep.
And there's some nice little videos there. I know we had a parent meeting last night and showed a couple of them about what self-determination is and what you can do. So if you just go down, it's a lot of good videos that help describe that as well. So that's a really great resource there as well.
Just spend some time on this site, imdetermined.org. There's a ton of great stuff. And you know what? A lot of this comes from students, but also parents. Parents who have gone through similar things, who have similar concerns and fears and questions, right? So take some time, see what they have to say. All right, what other questions, concerns, comments?
Yeah, there was a couple of them. Let me get to the top one here real quick. For someone who needs help with medical and financial decisions, what would you recommend?
Sure. So it's sometimes hard to give answers to specific questions without knowing more detail. So just keep that in mind when we try to answer this, that we would typically get more information about that person's situation, because the help that one person needs with medical stuff may be very different than the help that another person needs with medical stuff. But what are some of your options? Well, if they need help with money, you can look at things like a payee to help manage the benefit money. You can look at things like a joint bank account. So if they don't have a lot of experience managing money, but they want to kind of get their feet wet and learn, a joint bank account is a great way, where maybe you are on the bank account and so are they. You can set spending limits. You have access to the account to see what comes in and what goes out. You can take reports from that joint bank account and maybe monthly sit down and look at it and say, all right, well, here's what we did with this account, or here's what you did with this account. Do we need to make adjustments? Is there something to teach you about this, right? Medical stuff, again, depends on the person. But there's a resource that we sometimes share that we didn't share tonight. I think send it to Patty to share with all of you. But actually, you know what? I'll bring it up while I'm talking, because It is something that helps people learn how to be more involved in their medical life. Give me 1 second while I find it. Here it is. So the thing that I like about this tool that I'm going to show is that it's actually a script for people. So for those people who maybe, have never scheduled a medical appointment in their life, and maybe they might not even have the skills to do all of that, right? So share it now. So this tool has scripts to use. It walks you through. Making an appointment is usually done by phone or in person. Here's the contact information that you need, right? And I'll scroll further down because there is actually a script here. Hello, my name is blank, and I'm calling to make an appointment with blank, the doctor, right? Now, let's say that that is the only thing that they end up able to do. That's still them taking some control, right? That's still them making some decisions for themselves. They may not get to any other part of this script, but if they can initiate that, they're involved in their own medical decisions to some degree. But this goes on further. So the reason I'm making the appointment, fill that in. This is who to call back if they need to call me back. These are the times I'm free for an appointment. All right, well, when was my appointment? So I don't forget. About how long can I expect it to take? And we could go on, but this is just a great resource. It even gives you some sample questions to ask about things like medication, which I think is next here. Yeah, here's some things to bring to a healthcare visit. And again, to what level can you involve somebody in this to have more autonomy, more control, make more of their own decisions? Maybe it's just looking at this checklist. Hey, before we go to the appointment, you got your insurance card? And if that's it, that's still great. It's progress for a lot of people, right? So anyway, for people who need help with medical stuff, this is one option that you can use. If the person does understand, but really just needs help or someone else to make the decision, then you can use a power of attorney, a medical power of attorney, and they can choose someone to make medical decisions for them. You can do a release of information. If what they really need is someone in there with them to interpret what the doctor's saying, help them understand so they can make their own choices, try a release of information. And there are many other things, but we would typically get to know that person a little better so we could give more individualized recommendations.
Was that site, was that Aspire, or can you put that in the chat?
Yeah, that's ASAN. I'll send you the link to it.
Okay.
You have it, or I'll send you the whole document.
Okay. Yeah, you can send me the link and then just email me the document and I'll put it on we have a SALT Google Drive where we'll put up all the documents here and information that you can access tonight. And we also add it to our, we have a website and also to our live binder, so you can find it there. Let's see, we had some questions. Let me just make sure somebody was asking, do you do or have ever done in the past presentations for school districts? Specifically, if we want to share your information with the school, could they reach out to you to set up a training for their staff if interested?
We do presentations, and Courtney, you can jump in anytime you want, but we do presentations to everybody, right? Like, Courtney, tell them some of the groups we've done presentations for, if you remember.
Yeah, to SSAs, Josh and I got to present to our self-advocacy group. We got to present to EI. We got to present to, didn't we do board members?
We do board members, yep.
And also Connie Melman and I, we just recently got to present to some students in Project Life, and we got to present to them about supported decision making.
And we have done presentations for students. I was asked to do presentations for school district students over a period of several months. So I would come back and do follow-up presentations. One of the really fun things about working with students is that we do a different presentation in this. This is not the presentation we do for students. We play games about decision making. We actually even use the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire format to talk about how we make decisions, who we reach out for help, things like that. So they really enjoy it. And then the second time we come back, we talk about, do you know yourself well enough to advocate to be able to make your own decisions? Do you know what your strengths are? Do you know what your interests are? Do you know what your needs are? And then can we talk about a goal and maybe how you would get some help to make decisions about that goal? So yes, we do presentations to answer your question for anyone and everyone who needs it.
Someone would know if this is a free or paid resource, and then how and when do they get started with this process?
Yeah, so in terms of the resource, as long as it is kind of directly connected to the Butler County Board of DD, it's a free resource. They have a contract with us and we can help their partners. If we start getting several degrees separated from that, then yes, we tend to charge a fee to be able to do it. I think the fee right now is somewhere around 60 to 75 bucks an hour. So it's pretty reasonable, and we can design a presentation or we can design facilitation, however you need it designed. So some of the things that we do are meet with parents, talk to them about guardianship, plan for when their children turn 18. We can meet with teams and explore what some of these less restrictive options are and practice actually using them with the person. We can facilitate conversations among team members where maybe there's some tension, a power struggle of some sort, and figure out, all right, well, how can we get the outcome that everybody wants out of this by using supported decision making? So we will be glad to help. There may occasionally be a fee depending on the kind of service that you need, but we have a whole menu there that I can show you if you reach out to me.
There was another question here. What if someone is in denial of their disability and they say they don't need help when they clearly do? Do you, let's see, I got a little thing there. Do you find males to resist help more than often?
Sure. So I'll just share my experience, and then Courtney, if you have anything else you want to share, please feel free. I would say that if someone is in quote denial about their disability, that something like a guardian is not necessarily going to be able to do anything about that. Like a guardian can give consent for them to get the help that they think they need, but a guardian can't force them to accept that help. I've experienced this as a guardian where I've given consent for someone. Yes, I think you need this treatment, medical treatment, and the person completely refuses to do it. What am I going to do then? I mean, can I involve the police? Can I have them restrained and sedated? Yeah, I mean, I could. Often the court wants you to notify them if you're going to do that. That's the other thing we didn't really talk about, is the court is the superior guardian when you're guardian. So you're just a representative of the court. They can overrule your decisions. They can remove you as guardian. They can call you into court and hold you in contempt if you don't complete the paperwork. And I'm not saying courts are bad, but these are things you should know about guardianship before you apply for guardianship. So the court is the superior guardian. You are a representative of the court, and they also make very clear, and this is tough, when you're a parent and a guardian, they are two separate hats that you wear. As a guardian, you cannot make decisions as the parent. You have to make decisions in the best interest of the person. What would they want for themselves? And that can be tough for family members and parents to separate those two roles. But the court makes very clear they are two very distinct roles.
I think some of the questions also, Josh, I know on your presentation you had your email or your contact. If you and Courtney, you guys, either one or both of you, if you want to put in the chat box again your contact information for some of this, like how to get started, and just trying to get things rolling in their area.
Yeah, so just email, and then we can reach out to you. And we typically do, like ONI typically does a discovery meeting where we just meet and listen to what you want, what your needs are. And then we can come up with a plan for helping you address those needs, either for you specifically or for your community or your organization. So we do that a lot. We've done it for 3 years now to help organizations all across the state figure out how to implement this.
Can I share something?
Of course.
Mm-hmm. So with needing help and having trouble accepting that, like I knew I had a physical disability. I knew I had cerebral palsy, but I didn't know that I have autism, and I've never actually been officially diagnosed. I just know that there's I struggle a lot with memory and executive functioning skills. And so like I have staff that come every day to help me in my apartment, and that was like really hard for me to accept because I thought that I was only gonna need help like sometimes, and like I don't know, I just didn't think I would need as much help as I do. So I guess something that's really helped me with that is I've been able to like talk about it, and like I go in like counseling or just with like family and friends, like sometimes that'll get to me where I'm not where I think I like should be at, or I'm not like doing what my typical peers are doing. So it's like so yeah, I just wanted to share that can be difficult, but I'm glad that I do have the help that I need, because if I had to manage everything on my own, I know that I would get really overwhelmed and stressed out, and I wouldn't be able to do my job as well as I do, and have the life that I want to have if I didn't have staff to help me. So
And Courtney, I think Courtney's an incredible speaker, by the way, and I'm not going to put her on this. I'm not meaning to put her on the spot, but Courtney, would you be open to talking to someone else who maybe is struggling with that, accepting that they might need help and sharing your experience with them?
yeah.
Okay. And the other thing that I'll say, just as an add-on to what Courtney said, is we do support decision making for people. We come in and help them make decisions. We don't make the decision for them, but we help them make the decision. When they make the decision themselves, they're so much more invested in it than when someone tells them they have to do it, right? So we can have those conversations, help them see their options, and they're much more willing when they get to make the decision.
Is there any other questions? I'm going to close the recording so we can just kind of open it up if anybody wants to just speak after the recording is ended. So I'm going to be closing it, but I wanted to thank both of you for talking. Great presentation, as always. You guys do a great job. And I just wanted to make a shout out. Courtney, you do a chit chat on Tuesdays at 11 o'clock. Which Tuesdays is that? You can, I mean, she does interviews like different people usually in their chit chat.
Yeah, we just had Marla Van Hoos, and she's a singer-songwriter, and she's blind, and she's taught herself how to play the piano. She's been playing since she started when she was 2 years old, and it was really interesting to hear her story. And she got to sing the song "Fight Song" by Rachel Platt, and it was she did really good.
How often does chit chat meet? I know they had it like Tuesday yesterday. That's how often do they?
We do it once a month on Tuesday, so it's Tuesdays at 11 a.m.
Okay, and I usually post their chit
Courtney,
chat.
do you want to tell them?
Go ahead.
Courtney, do you want to tell them about your vlog really quickly? I know you might say, I have the link ready, so I'll share it.
Okay, so I also have a vlog. I only have one episode so far, and we have another episode of my vlog coming out, but it hasn't got done editing yet. But we call it Courtney Explains It All, and I just talk about different topics that I'm passionate about, like accessibility and advocacy. And the very first one I did was I explained disability and language, so like the difference between person first and identity first language, and talked about like what language to use around people with disabilities, and just like the different things like that.
And Courtney's underselling it. It is amazing. I've shared it with everybody I can, but it really is. It's worth a watch.
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff that you do, Courtney, is wonderful. And Josh, the information you share is so helpful. I'm going to close the recording at the moment, and then I'm going to open it up for any other questions or any other discussions. 1 second. Yeah. Just my